Hi there, I'm Linda and this is Huttons Valley Permaculture. Now, I'm a little worried about my carrots. The last time I had them at this point, I took off all the covers without considering the weather. We had a downpour and it washed all my little seedlings out. And we've kind of got the same thing happening now. I've looked at the forecast. Not tomorrow, but the next 2 days, we have the potential for 20 mil on each of those days. So if it all comes in 1 hour, it sort of pushes all the water through. If it was spread over a 24-hour period, it might be okay. So we really don't know what's going to happen. If we have a look here, you can see the little seedlings are starting to come up. The wet towels protect these little seeds while they germinate by keeping them well hydrated. But I also find that the slugs don't really get in and under the towels either. And I find for that reason this method is pretty successful. But there does come a point when you've got to let these seedlings see the sunshine. And that was why last time I made the decision to remove all these towels and give them that sun so they could get going. Now, just having a close look at this end, it looks like this end's not as far along with the seedlings as the other end, so I might leave the towels on this end to grow a little bit longer with that protection on it. So I'll put these 2 end towels back on again. There's one sneaky slug that's got through, and give them a bit longer. Actually, I think I'll put the 3rd towel on and nurture these ones a little bit more. With some remaining covered, I can kind of experiment with this end, knowing that I've still got that end secure. But for this end, I'm going to actually, besides pulling out the weeds, get my little sort of hoop structures and then put a net over the top of that. If it looks like it's going to be pouring rain, I can then put the towels over the top of those structures and hopefully protect it from dumping rain in that way. They can get a little bit more light with these hoops on top. I was going to put another netting over the top of them, but my birds that are digging up the garden aren't really an issue at the moment, so I think we'll be right to leave them like that. And if it looks like it's going to be dumping rain at some point, I'll just drag those towels back over the top of it to give it a bit of shelter. My garden's all a bit of an experiment, really. Other than having a look at the carrot patch, there's not too much that I'm going to do in the garden today, but I thought I'd just talk through a few things that I did yesterday afternoon while the rains were here. We got about 11 mil, so just before that, I popped out into the garden to do a bit of a harvest. The zucchinis are still producing beautiful flowers like this, and lovely zucchinis. Yesterday, from this patch, I got a bucket of beautiful zucchinis. Not much to be gathered today, so I'll leave those ones to grow on, but yesterday I managed to dehydrate a whole lot of zucchinis, which can be grabbed out of the pantry and thrown into stews and soups and things through winter. And because of my rotting capsicum issue, I made the call to strip the plants of all the capsicums. Now the green ones I've just left in a basket just to ripen a little bit further. But I did have 4 beautiful red capsicums that I preserved by boiling them in a vinegar solution before packing them into jars and preserving them in olive oil. I also grabbed the pumpkin, which I'd previously harvested, and processed that. I chopped up fresh pieces and froze them. I roasted big and small pieces, some to grab out for salads and side dishes, but some larger pieces I can use for soups. I also got out here and gathered what ripe tomatoes I could, and I'm currently dehydrating those. But I also grabbed some underripe tomatoes along with a couple of eggplants, some capsicums and some hot chilies, and I've started to make a mixture called explosive mixture. Sliced veg is salted, then drained, then soaked in vinegar and drained. Add in other ingredients and process it and store it in jars with olive oil on top. Before starting to film, I did get out and get a couple of my little gardens tucked in with the mulch. I think this little garden's going to respond really well to the addition of this mulch. I'm just going to potter around doing a little bit of weeding before I head in for lunch, and then this afternoon I'm planning to head out to one of my swales. One of my projects, which is fairly never ending, is managing my swales. Now, it was 2019 that I had my swales dug and I first planted them out, and I've been working to kind of manage them and improve the soil ever since. Now, what we've got here is where I chopped down 2 trees recently and used the branches and everything as mulch. I also added in a few new trees which will grow up, and I'll just repeat the same process with them, chopping them down and using them as a mulch source. But I have found over those years these trees grow pretty fast, and sometimes they kind of get away from you a bit, and I've really got to focus on taking down the really big trees so that they're not shading my productive plants too much, and I kind of keep everything in balance. Now, when I headed out to the swales today, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but having a quick look around, it's become obvious. These 2 acacias here are really getting too big, and if we leave them, they'll just be harder to get down because they'll continue to grow. They're really big trees, and they do last a while for a volunteer type tree, so we really want to cut them now. And getting those down will open up the sunshine to what is a cherry tree just behind there, which would appreciate a bit more sun. There's also a couple of stone fruit trees that will benefit from these larger trees removal as well. And with the never-ending project that is my front garden, I reckon a bit of this can be shredded up and used in future composts. But a lot of it will probably end up on the ground like this, which I haven't really chopped up sufficiently from my last trees that I took down. Sometimes when I'm looking for just something to do but nothing to think about really, I'll just come out and start chopping these kind of one by one, and eventually they kind of get to the ground. But more important than finishing these off is just stopping these trees getting bigger. The timing of my work in the swales really depends on my grazing animals cycle. I usually try and get into a swale just after they've been through so that there's not as much impact on the grass. If I do it just ahead of them coming in and I've compacted the grass, then I've kind of reduced what they've got to graze on. So I kind of cycle around following them to get work done out in the swales. And that's the second one down. Cherry trees in the sunshine now. And I think those other 2 little stone fruit will be as well, over there somewhere. So now the job of cutting this up, taking some up for shredding, but leaving most of this down here. Well, taking down a couple of trees really does change the look of your swales. And it kind of opens up all the productive trees. We've got the fig trees, the stone fruit, we've got the cherry tree, and we opened up the plum trees the other day. And with the trees cut and safely on the ground, now I've just got to move all of this material. Some of it will go up into my driveway where I generally shred things, but most of it, sort of the leafy stuff, will go around my trees. Now, the thick branches, I don't mind if they just line the swales. I only graze my animals through the sort of the swale area when the grasses are really long. Certainly not through winter when this can be just underwater for a lot of the time if we have a good wet season. So lining it with these big logs here doesn't really matter. And because the swale's holding water a lot of the time, it will help these big logs break down. Now, I've got plenty of firewood that burns better than this. So I think a great use for them is as a moisture sink. They can soak up that water through the wet season and slowly release it to the environment during the dry. And all the while breaking down. And we've seen up in my veggie garden what decomposed wood chips does to soil. So this breaking down will really help the moisture holding capacity of the soil in the swale. Well, you've seen the fun part of the process with the trees coming down. I'm just going to get on with cutting this up, moving things around, and I'll show you when I get done. I've got all the branches and everything redistributed. I've got a pile in the driveway and I've piled up the leaves up on the berm, and all the logs are lining the swale. By lining the swale where they are means it still kind of leaves the bottom of the swale for grazing, and they'll still get soaked well enough to help kind of with the moisture in the environment, I think. But with the sunlight coming through, it looks fantastic, I reckon. The branches have been dumped in large pieces really, so they could do with some more chopping down and finer management, but we can leave that for another day. Last night it seemed to rain all night, and all I could think about was how my carrot seedlings were going to fare. It's been raining all morning and now it's early afternoon, so the first time I've got out with my camera to see how these guys have survived. Having lost all my last bed of carrots, I was kind of a bit nervous to come out today. But as you can see, these little guys did survive the downpour. So we'll cover them over again. This week is going to be kind of raining on and off. Now we've got one heavy day coming up on Thursday, and I think that's when I'll put over kind of a bit more substantial cover to make sure these little guys survive. It will be my second bed of carrots, so if I lose it again, it's not too critical, but I do love carrots, so I love having plenty. You know, spicy carrot soup's one of my favourites. But at least I've got this bed, which when I started it, we didn't have much in the way of rain. And when I uncovered it, I could just gently water it and it didn't disturb anything. Could almost do with a bit of thinning again. Let's see how, well, that's looking like a nice little carrot. I like to actually thin it when the carrots get to a stage where you can actually eat some of them. So this is not a bad size for that. Yeah, you can take out some of the bigger ones and just leave space for the rest to grow. Well, I think that's a pretty good sign that this bed's off to a great start. Hopefully the rains stay away so we can get a little bit of a project done. I've cleared out the pantry of all my growing onions and some that have just kind of gone a bit smushy. They did start to smell a little bit too, so it was good to get them out of the house. But recently a viewer said that she plants all of this, and I've planted some in another garden. And while some are just starting to get going, it looks like at least one of them has really started to take off. So I want to get those ones planted as well and just see what they do. I figure if I just sort of clear this space where I did grow spinach, and those plants have been gone for a while, the cucumbers are dying off and will be finished soon. But just on this edge of this little bed where the spinach was, I think I can sneak in those onions. These weeds are mostly kind of on the path area, which the path's disappeared. Surprise, surprise, in my garden. I've got little rats eating potatoes that are hiding around here. Oh, there's quite a few potatoes actually. We might move them onto a bed of their own actually. But I think it won't take too much effort to get this space cleared and just give these onions a chance at a second life. Now in this garden I've still got a few chilli plants that I'm leaving just to ripen the chilli so I can get the seeds. But they won't be in the way for my planting. My sickle just started to slice into something, and it turns out to be yet another potato. But look at that one. It looks like it's being gnawed by the rats. They've found it, but I certainly didn't find that one. These are just multiple small potatoes. Growing in the path. Now I just went to move this vine a little bit and move this cucumber, but it sort of came off the vine fairly readily. Now there's still a few cucumbers in here. That one I'll leave. I've still got a few cucumbers in my fridge actually, and I've done plenty of cucumber preserves, so I don't really need to grab these if they don't jump off the vine at me. A little hard to define where the path ends and the garden starts just there, so I'll have to move in some wood chips to define that better. But we've cleared enough area just for a single row of these onions along that trellis line. These plants won't be here all winter, but the onions will still be on the sort of shadier side of the garden. We're not really giving away prime veggie garden real estate, so it doesn't really matter about having these here. I like the idea of just giving them a go. And the best thing about all of this is these stinky onions are out of my pantry. I've been using lots of this unfinished compost for mulching my garden beds, and as you can see, I'm just about out of this first lot that I made. I do have this second compost, which is still doing its thing and slowly breaking down, and my intention was to leave that to finish properly. But with a large garden, many of it still not mulched properly, I think I'm going to have to use this second lot as an unfinished compost mulch as well. So having realised that quite a while ago, I've already got compost number 3 on the go. Now it's about day 10 for this compost, and it's nicely in the active phase still. Now I'm kind of putting together bits and pieces to cover this over, including the horrible blue tarps. I ordered a couple of canvas tarps, but that was like 2.5 weeks ago. I've contacted the company last week, but I still haven't heard anything yet. So it makes me a bit nervous that my tarps just aren't going to be coming. Anyway, I've got to get this turned today. What I do need is some big cardboard pieces without all the tape on it, so I can cover it over and then put the tarps on top, and that might help keep those little bits of plastic out. but I haven't got that at the moment either. So this compost is a third just green grass clippings from when I mowed my nature strip, just sort of out there. A third shreddings of tree trimmings, and probably a third manure, because I've got lots of that stuff. And we can tuck it in once more. We started this video with me being very worried about my carrots and the rains, but turns out I'm more worried about slug damage with them. So I'm finally going to do something about that. I've got some traps and I'm going to put them down. I've got some water bottles that I've cut the top off, inverted it and put some tape around it to hold it in place, and that is going to be our container. I bought some cheap beer and we're going to put that in there, and that stays in there like that, and hopefully those little slugs go in through that entrance there and can't find their way out. So I'm going to pop 4 of those around my carrot bed, and hopefully that catches a few slugs and leaves a few carrots to grow.